CollectAWrestlePalooza. CollectAWrestlePalooza.
Hello friends, fellow sports card collectors, wrestling card enthusiasts, it's Tom from CollectAWrestlePalooza. This week's video I want to talk about the big picture, and specifically I want to talk about the role that depression plays in market crashes, and I also want to talk about the idea that myths can be perpetuated without any solid evidence behind them. So let's think about market crashes. There have been a few of them. They've happened throughout the history of hobby and collecting and any asset that anyone is investing in, really. Stock markets crashed. The housing market crashed in 2008. Sports cards crashed in the 80s. Anyone that was a child of the 80s that bought Mark McGuire's and Jose Canseco's thinking that they were going to become rich knows that. And it just happens. Markets go up and down and they crash. Now, why does this happen? One of the roles that I think plays in a market crash is depression. And the second thing, which goes hand in hand with depression, is this idea of people perpetuating myths without any solid backing behind it. So people say the sports card market is down. Based on what? What do you see? What is happening? Let's break it down. Social media. Is social media as prevalent in sports cards right now as it was a year ago or 2 years ago? Is your YouTube channel getting as many views as you had in the past? Are subscribers coming onto your YouTube channel? Are people following your Twitter accounts? Etc., etc. Second thing is the price of the cards that you're selling, and then also how often they're selling. I was just buying, or I was interested in buying, a sealed UFC 1 VHS. People know that those were selling for thousands and thousands of dollars not that long ago, and the person had one and they couldn't sell it. The auction was $186 starting bid and no one bid on it, which I thought even at $186 was a steal. Now, because of that, I took pause. No one was bidding on it. So I said to myself, what am I not seeing here that other people are seeing as to why this is not worth that amount of money? And that's depression. There's depression in the hobby right now, where people see these things happening and they tend to perpetuate themselves. You start to think that you know what the future is going to be, and you act as if you know what the future is going to be. And then everyone starts doing that based on the myths that are perpetuated. So you say the market is down. Based on what? You might have heard it on a social media site. You might have done the research yourself. And if you did do the research yourself, I commend you on that. Now, if you look at the research, is that based on a long-term view that the market's down? Is that based on versus 2 years ago when prices were artificially up? Is that based on a 50-year span, a 10-year span, a 5-year span? What is that based on? Or do you really know how to evaluate a market to make that conclusion? If you do, that's great. If you don't, then you're forecasting in your head that the market is going to continue to go down because that's what people are saying. And it's a vicious cycle because it perpetuates the myth and then people don't buy. Let's look at this UFC example. 6 months ago, I would have jumped on that auction. I would have bought that tape without any hesitation. Today, I didn't. Why didn't I? It's based on what I thought other people knew that I didn't. Now, that's not to say that that's a bad thing. If you're evaluating a market based on, people that are smarter than you, that might be a good thing. You might learn from them. But the shadow side of that is that it stopped me from buying something that I normally would have bought because it just seemed to me, why didn't anyone bid on this? Why wasn't anyone jumping on this object? Is there something wrong with it? Is the market just down? Do people that know UFC better than I, or the market for UFC better than I, did they halt because they know that UFC car? It's a vicious cycle. And I call that depression because depression is forecasting future events based on factors that you don't really know. That's what I see depression as. Depression is everything is going to, Everything in my life is tumbling. It will continue to tumble, and that's what's going to happen in the future. So right now, I feel sad because of what I know is going to happen in the future. That's the difference between sadness and depression. Sadness is you're just grieving something that happened right now. Depression is that you are going to be sad in the future because that thing is going to continue, so it's worthless. It's not worth your time to put time into that endeavor. That's the way I see the difference between sadness and depression, and I think that there is depression in the sports card market right now. So what do? How do we say maybe depression is good? Maybe a little bit of market correction is good, but for the long term, how do we avoid that tumble where everything just gets out of line and suddenly no one wants to collect sports cards anymore? And I think the best thing to do is to try to stay optimistic. I really think that that is the best thing that anyone that wants this hobby to continue can do, is to just stay optimistic, keep a smile on your face, continue to collect because you love what you're collecting. Don't worry so much about the economics of it. If you're in too deep, then, maybe pull back a little bit to where you're comfortable. But even if you are seeing these things happen, stay optimistic about the future. That doesn't mean that they're going to continue to happen. The future is unwritten. Is the sports card market going to collapse? No one knows, and that future is based on what we do now. It's not something that we have no control over. Think about it. People think, oh my God, it's out of control. There's nothing I can do to make this better. That's not true. Stay optimistic. Stay optimistic. Continue to have a smile on your face. Continue to support fellow folks who have smiles on their face, and just let's have fun with this. Let's keep it rolling. Wrestling cards, sports cards, it's all good. It's all something we want to do for as long as we can. So let's just stay optimistic together. Anyway, that's my thought for this week. I hope that you found some value in this. If you have any thoughts about the big picture or things that are going on, please feel free to leave a comment, and otherwise have a great week.